Welcome back to my channel. Today is an exciting video, as I probably say every time, but that's because I'm excited every time. But especially, I'm excited for today. Today we're going to do Hail to the Thief by Radiohead. I'm getting into territory where I know less and less and less of what's on these albums. I know 2 + 2 = 5, and I know They're There, and I know Sail to the Moon off this album. Everything else on this album I have not heard, which, by the way, I assume people that are here are people who have seen other Radiohead reactions that I've done. I love to sit and talk about it, so if you don't like the talkative reactions, this is your warning. I take no personal offense. It's just, I think some of the most value that comes out of new music and getting to experience it is getting to share stories and explain why, which is why I always encourage people to comment their own connection and stories to the music that we're talking about. So we shall kick it off with 2 + 2 = 5.
And two always makes a fire. It's the devil's way now. There's no way out. You can scream it, you can shout. Because you're my meditation, but it's not, maybe not.
I'm really excited to hear how that goes into the next song, and I wish I didn't have to pause it to talk, but I do. So first things first, I have never been so excited to feel unsettled in my life. That's how I feel when I get to experience a new Radiohead album. One thing that I love about that song is the way, obviously it pushes the pace very much towards the second half of the song, but I love the mixture of the slowness with the fastness that they do at the beginning. And when Tom comes back in, I can just imagine actually hearing this album for the first time when it came out, when it did in 2003, and just being like, there he is, he's back. I exhaled a breath of relief when I got to hear his voice on the start of a record again. What a way to start an album. I actually have no idea how to anticipate what's going to happen here, which is my experience every single time I listen to Radiohead, but I'm very, very excited. So we are going to listen to Sit Down, Stand Up.
Sit down, stand up, sit down. Wake up, you anytime. Say, can I help you
Every time I sit here to film a reaction video, before I'm always anxious that I'm not gonna have enough interesting things to say or enough reflection to make it worth people actually watching this. I don't have to worry about that with Radiohead because I am always shocked by what they do. I'm always so intrigued by what they're doing that there's always something to say. It's insane. I mean, it's genuinely, I cannot name another experience that is like this. I'm just always surprised by what I'm feeling through my ears. And I say feeling on a purpose. Like, it's not listening to. Like, my entire body feels that music. One thing in specific, when the drums first came in, I was like, oh yeah, like, this is the best thing. Well, not first came in, but when they started ramping up, I was just like, this is the best thing that could ever happen. It was such an incredible mix of percussion with the electronic sounds that they were doing before that it was so nice to get the drums, and then all of a sudden I can't even explain what was happening. It was just like aliens invaded and they were shooting at me, and then the drums continued, and it was this weird combination of reality and not reality. And if you're not someone who enjoys Radiohead, then you're gonna think I'm so annoying for the way I'm gonna describe everything today. But if you are someone who enjoys Radiohead, which most likely you are because you're watching this, then everything I say will probably make sense to you about the experience of actually being within their music when you listen to it. It literally feels like they meshed two worlds together, which is probably the intention of doing contradictory sounds together at the same time, but it works very effectively and you never expect it. Anyways, lyrically, I didn't go into that song, but I find the sit down, stand up to be very interesting, and the way that they added a period in the title, not a comma, kind of relates them both as statements, except they did not put a period on stand up, so it's almost like they're saying them differently, which is interesting. When I go back and listen to it, I'll kind of take in more of that, but in terms of the first overall listen through, those two things as statements, they're actions, right? Like sit down, like stop what you're doing, or stand up, get involved in what's going on, when we should be taking ourselves out of a situation and when we should actually be involving ourselves and making our own statement to it. That's what I kind of get from that. Also, just the way that we follow commands immediately. I was just at a hockey game, and every time I'm there and they put on like Sweet Caroline and everyone's singing it, or the Friends theme song with the claps, I'm amazed by just the way, like, how we're all brainwashed. And I don't mean this in a very deep way, I just mean in the way that we respond as humans to things that we've heard our whole lives, and we all do it. The Friends theme song came on, I didn't clap, but I thought the clap in my head, and like 70% of the audience just claps. And it's just interesting. So in terms of subconscious actions that we make that have always been within us, kind of interesting with this, but I could be very lyrically off base because I did not read through them as I listened. I just absorbed what I could. So I'm going to move on to Sail to the Moon, and I'm going to enjoy it. So like I said earlier, that was one of the songs that I have actually heard, but in the context of the last song is quite interesting, because I was just expressing how the end feels like aliens have come down and they're fighting within our reality because of the mix of the drums and the electronic, but they sound so much like sci-fi gunshots, like a Star Wars, Star Trek sci-fi noise. And in the context of that, like a grand finish right into Sail to the Moon, it makes Sail to the Moon have kind of a different context if we're linking the way Sit Down, Stand Up ended into the way Sail to the Moon begins, because did we just get abducted by aliens? Who knows? But we will listen to Backdrifts. I'm just gonna pretend now that I'm now in the alien spaceship. I think I'm literally in an alien spaceship. I think I've literally been abducted. I think I have. Something that's interesting about this song that I noticed is when I read the title Backdrifts, I wasn't sure exactly what the intention of that word was going to be, but then obviously when you get to it, like, we're backdrifting, I'm backsliding, things are going backwards. But rather than using we're going backwards or we're falling backwards, like, the choice of words is interesting, especially then when you get to so you're backtracking. It gives you the context that someone is at fault for the reason why we're backdrifting or backsliding. And I don't want to go full into this narrative of me being on an alien ship, but it feels definitely like, rather than fighting society like they have in past albums, that the band has joined with society to fight like a bigger issue, because they sing, all evidence has been buried, all tapes have been erased, but your footsteps give you away, so you're backtracking. There's obviously two sides to the picture that we're being painted. It feels less like a criticism on society as a whole and rather pinpointing onto one main body for causing the issues that we then are living through, which could be wrong, but that's kind of how I interpret it. But we will move on and listen to Go to Sleep.
Something for the vagabond man over my dead body.
The fade out was a crazy choice. Man, do I love Radiohead guitar. I feel like if there was ever a sound in music that I wish I could write and I wish I could experience the skill of writing, it would be Radiohead guitar. Like, it's so awesome. I just feel electrified when I listen to it personally. And it's especially interesting because of the way it changes throughout the song. When it first started, the whole song, and Tom came in the guitar, it felt very reminiscent of some Nirvana, especially with the tone and Tom's phrasing, the way he emphasized certain words. It was really cool. I enjoyed it. But then again, you know that there's always more. And more they did. So, very cool. Again, with the notion of there being a greater evil that they're fighting. Like, we don't want to wake the monster, tiptoe around him, tie him down. It's interesting. They're obviously against one very prominent being. I'm not going to speculate on what it could be, but there's plenty of options. The next song is Where I End and You Begin. Anyone else listening to this album feel like the guitar, the bass, the drums, like, is particularly awesome on this record? Like, I don't know if it's just I've been at a lack of it in my life the last couple months, but I feel electrified, and something about the way that they've gone about producing it is so good, and I'm so glad that I'm listening to it. So, if that's just a personal experience, then you can let me be weird and annoying by myself. But if you feel the same about this album, I'd be interested to know that.
There's a gap in between. There's a gap where we meet. You're laughing alone. X around the place like the parted hideaways. I will eat you alive. I will eat you alive. I will eat you alive.
There's definitely a sentiment to this album of a dissociation, and more than just sonically, that always happens to an extent with a Radiohead album. There's like a contrast between like reality and, well, not reality, but our physical earth and what is outside of it, or what was maybe true for it at one point. Like he references the dinosaurs roaming the earth and the sky turns green. Then I'm up in the clouds and I can't come down. I can watch and not take part. Where I end and where you start. Like there's a very physical difference between two different opposing parties, rather than just feeling like you're floating to the sky. Like he's actually expressing that is lyrically the point of what they're getting across, which is interesting because so many, I mean, when you get into the albums and then dissect the lyrics and do your own thing, albums can mean what they want to mean to different people. But I feel like my experience with some Radiohead is that a full album isn't necessarily cohesive song to song. Like, they might be criticizing one thing in many different ways or dealing with feelings of anxiety and depression that have a cohesive theme. But this album specifically, there's a consistent appearance of this idea of fighting something that's larger than us. Now we will listen to We Suck Young Blood. I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to expect, so I have no comment. It was definitely not piano, that's for sure. I was not expecting piano.
Are you hungry? Are you sick? Are you...
Okay, I'm not gonna yap about this, but this is a callback to when I brought up the claps that we do at the Friends theme song, and just the way that so many people, they hear a trigger word and they respond. You know, like that's what we did in class as children. We would respond to the teacher with a clap if she wanted our attention. And I feel like this is just kind of a play on that idea still, that there's so many things that we're responsive to in our life and experience without actually thinking about what we're doing anymore, because we've always done it. That it's just really interesting that they actually used a clap for this, and clearly very haunting lyrics. I'll listen to it.
You're begging for a break. Are you sweet? Are you afraid? Keep it
So I've had the lyrics up for the past few songs because I'm finding it very helpful and interesting, specifically for this album. But obviously they start off, are you hungry? Are you sick? Are you begging for a break? Are you sweet? We want the young. Like all of these things, what do they all have in common? They all have in common easily manipulated. And obviously when you hear a song like this, it feels unsettling, but what is more unsettling is the fact that we're living in the phase of society where this is all very realistic. Radiohead has always been ahead of the curve in the sense that they see the way new things are able to then manipulate the culture. It's not necessarily technology itself, but it's the way that these things get used, whether that be money or power, or in a lot of the cases, new technology. And I think it would have been interesting to hear this when it was released, but I think I almost have an even more interesting experience listening to it now while I see the way it's reality. Not to be one of those kids on the internet, but I obviously use TikTok, not all the time, but I don't really scroll on Instagram, so if I'm going to scroll an app, it's going to be TikTok. But it is interesting how detached we are from the idea of how manipulated we are by it, because this morning, I remember this moment. I got up to make breakfast, and specifically was like, okay, where's my phone first? I need my phone so that I can watch a TikTok while I make my breakfast. When did I get to the point where I couldn't just make a rap without consuming something else? And I recognize that, and I recognize that as actually a serious issue for myself. The fact that I picked up my phone to watch a 20-second video in the background while I made a rap was insane, and I realized it as I was doing it. And that's what I think back to when I listen to this. Like, are you the one who's in a situation that we can easily manipulate and then have power over you and then control you? And the lyrics are so serious because it's serious. But these things, like I said, they apply to things that go right over our head, like the use of a social media app. Simple as that. They're getting something from us when we do it. So of course, it's going to be done in the most thought out way to then consume more and more of your time in your life. And not only is the issue what you consume on there, but the issue is what you miss out by consuming. So again, it's not so much the idea that society is bad, but it's the idea that someone has then taken these items to control them, to control you, that I'm kind of getting from this album. We will move on and listen to the Gloaming. I joke about existential crises sometimes here, but this is one that actually triggered a very real emotional response for me. It feels like this is a backtrack to my head. I understand that they set intentions in writing on a specific theme and idea when they went out to do this, but when you let yourself completely fall into it, it's freaking me out, to be honest. Like, they will suck you down to the other side. They'll take your life away from you. The more you watch, the more you feel the need to watch. To the shadows, blue and red, your alarm bells, they should be ringing. They are ringing, Tom. They are ringing. And they may be ringing a little too much that I can't even comprehend. It's just freaky how on the nose it feels. I genuinely feel like they're in my brain. And it brings up an interesting conversation because we're talking about manipulation on here and how that goes over our head. But in a sense, they have just manipulated me into listening to their narrative and feeling freaked out. And they're right. They are right. But I wasn't thinking about this before I listened to the album. So I do need to think about it. It's an important conversation. It's funny because the way that you do make music, let alone what you write about, the specific notes you choose and ways that you produce something, they do manipulate the listener. So it's interesting. How many times have I just said, it's interesting, as if that gave you any context or explanation to something? The next song is There. Pause. I'm getting really excited. Okay, so he just said your alarm bells should be ringing, right? And I just started freaking out. There. That's what you say to calm someone down, but I doubt that's what's going to happen to me. I think that they're playing with my mind. It definitely didn't comfort me. But that's a great song. That's a song that, like I said, I had heard before, but I didn't go through the lyrics when I was listening to it. So definitely some more added context, and it's just great. There's never a song that I hear that I never want to hear again. It's genuinely so impressive what they can do. But we will move on to I Will. Again, the messaging is quite clear, and we can see that. The question that I do have, though, is that the layering that was on his voice in that song sounds like just him, but it made me think to ask if anyone else in this band ever sings. I know, like, lead-wise they wouldn't, but a lot of bands do backing vocals, and when I think back, I think only to Tom's voice, and I don't know if that's just because it's so uniquely his, or if it's because he does all the singing. Like, I'm just curious, something like that, is it just his voice layered, or did they layer other voices for that song? So if you have the answer to that, I would like to know. Or if there's a song that someone else is singing on, comment down below, because I want to check it out. But the next song is A Punch Up at a Wedding. What's interesting to me about this song is the importance of the example that he's using. When I was listening to this, I almost felt like it was applicable to the way I was feeling earlier listening to this album, like being in a good state and then being forced to evaluate something that is hard to hear, and kind of being that person who was like, you had to piss on our parade, you had to shred our big day, like he's saying lyrically. And it's interesting if you think about it in that context of them being the drunken person at the wedding making a fuss, because they're in a serious situation that's supposed to have one intended purpose, which is the celebration of the wedding. And they take the spotlight, they take the attention by bringing light to something that nobody wants to hear. And then the drunken part specifically, because that's what they say twice in this song adds even a bit more context to it, because it's almost like something that they weren't willing to say sober, something that they didn't fully know if they wanted to actually get into, but it was the access of the alcohol that then pushed them over the limit to say something that they kind of don't know if they want to take back. Which is just interesting if you apply it, if they're the ones feeling this way, by having to be the ones expressing these hard conversations. But anyways, next song is Mycomatosis. Myxomatosis? Hopefully I said that correct. That was really sick. That's one of those songs by them that I cannot lyrically dissect because there's just too much that goes over my head because I'm not skilled with that. But what I did really like is when he said, "I don't know why I feel so tongue-tied." Having it just be a simple statement after him divulging so much into how he felt, just to be like, "But I don't know why I feel the way that I do," it makes him come across as very human, very childlike, in a good way. It's interesting to get just a simple statement. That's what I love about what Sam Fender does in his lyrics, is when he just says something poetic and then he says a statement, because it gives you so much insight into their personality. And that simplicity, I think, is just something that the listener needed in that song, or I needed in that song. So I like that part of it. The next song is Scatterbrain. First things first, I will acknowledge the fact I had to switch my iPhone camera because my camera did die for the second time, and stopping to charge it for another 30 minutes was just gonna ruin the flow of being in this state, so I didn't want to do that. So apologies for the quality switch up, but we're on the last two songs, so I figured I could get away with it. What's funny about that song is that when you see the title, you think that it's gonna be Scattered. And I should know by now to not assume what I think is going to happen, but they just did the exact opposite of what I was anticipating. But with that, we have the last song on this album, and it is A Wolf at the Door. I was really intrigued by this title, and I'm really excited to hear it. And then I'll do an overall thoughts after this song is over. So we'll just listen to it.
Drag him out your window, dragging out the dead, singing a mess. You snakes and ladders, lift the lid up, pops the cracker, snaps you in the head, naps you in the neck.
I just said you can never expect what you're gonna hear, which I've said like 10 times in this video. But what I definitely did not expect was Tom York rapping.
In the teeth, steel toe caps, takes all your credit cards, get up, get the guns, get the eggs, get the flat in the face, the flat in the face, the flat in the face. Dance you fucker, don't you dare, don't you dare, don't you flat in the face. Take it with the love it's given, take it with a pinch of salt, take it to the tax now. I keep the world from the door, it calls me on the phone, tells me all the ways that he's gonna mess me up. Steal all my children if I don't pay the ransom. I'll never see him again if I squeal to the cops. Mess me up, steal all my children if I don't pay the ransom. I'll never see him again if I squeal to the cops. So I just go.
I'm not gonna lie, Tom sounded so English on that track that I had to double check that it was still Tom. But as soon as the high notes came in, I knew that it could be none other than our Tom York. That was very, very interesting as not only a song but a finishing song. I loved that, and I can't exactly pinpoint what it is that I loved the most about that song. Whether it was the switch between the speaking, I call it rapping, it's not necessarily rapping, but you know what I mean, just the way he was delivering his lyrics, to the singing. It's interesting because it feels like for most of this album, they're fighting the other presence, whatever you want to call it, the other being. But this one feels like the most frantic from them. Like the way he delivers it is the most, like he's actually let the fear win inside of him. Especially with the last half of this album, I was the one who was like feeling frantic and freaking out. So to get that response from the artist who then put in the thought to your brain to think about these things, it makes it like, it deepens the project on a whole nother level, because they're almost speaking about it as if they're above it, not in like an egotistical way, but as in they're the ones telling you about it, right? So they already know about this issue. But that song portrays it in the sense of like, hey, like we actually don't have the answer, and like this freaks us out too. Like, I don't know, it strips down another layer to then understand the message better, and I just thought it was really cool. I like that song. On a whole, what I found was interesting was that when I read the title of the album, Hail to the Thief, for some reason I was thinking of hail as in like hailing the king, like bowing down to them is how I pictured hail. But when I looked it up, it's actually just acknowledging or calling out to or calling upon, like when you would hail a cab per se is the example it gave. And it made me think about the whole thing in a very different way, because it wasn't this weird idea of praise towards something that has taken from you, but rather the acknowledgement of there's a thief in this situation, which in the context of the album, now that I've listened to it all, very much feels like what they're trying to send across to us, right? Like, pay attention, all of you who are brainwashed, i.e. the clapping, the messaging, stand up, sit down, like these statements, do this, do that, do this, do that, listen to this, watch this, you should act in this way, not in that way. All of these things actually stop to question them rather than just responding immediately. And then also with they want the young, they want the people that they can then manipulate. Hail to the thief. Acknowledge that there's a thief. Acknowledge that there's these things in your lives that are working for your attention, and most likely the ones that are working the hardest for your attention are actually going to be the ones to waste your time, to waste your life, to control the things that you should be able to control in your own life. And that is such an interesting takeaway. So I really enjoy the messaging of this album. If I'm taking it in the correct way, who knows? But I enjoy what I got out of it as the messaging as a whole. And it was cool to kind of be able to pull out one very concise idea from a Radiohead album, because I'm so overwhelmed most of the time that I don't even have the brain power to do that. But this one, for some reason, whether it's just time and place, is very applicable to the experiences that I'm going through in my life. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but I really enjoyed it, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it gave you something to think about as well. Thank you so much for being here. Let's let music bring us together, and don't forget to grow up slowly.